we're adventuring into the Monstriana Trenches, and we're going to be stating some lore and a story behind the Anglows. So to go back to those Monstriana Trenches, we've got to start off with as precious monster itself, the Anglow. We got to go back to that. Now, Anglow, what you might not know about it is that Anglow actually comes from another planet. This planet is submerged in water, and this is our very first confirmed planet ever to exist alongside the monster world. We've known about the planet, the monster world, but we've never known what's beyond that. So technically, Anglow is our very first alien ET monster. If you thought aliens didn't exist, they've just been confirmed right now. From this planet, however, one particular Anglow named Jlellijiggles was sent to go and explore and befriend the monsters living inside of the monster world. I don't really blame Jlellijiggles. I mean, the monsters are quite friendly creatures. We don't know how much they knew about them at this time, but if it were my guess, just knowing that aliens are out there at all, yeah, you'd want to go, wouldn't you? So Jlellijiggles made their way on down, and this was inside of the Dawn of Fire, and in this time when they were going off inside of the Dawn of Fire period, the spaceship actually malfunctioned, and therefore they were sent flying into the monster world. They went straight into the living ocean, which you can see from Fire Oasis and where Water Island is. Basically, it's the ocean of the monster world, if you guys didn't know. And then they were sent into a deep crack. This crack on the ocean floor of the living ocean led into the Monstriana Trenches. And this is where the true lore begins, guys, as this is when the location was first found by something other than what was initially inside of the Monstriana Trenches. So we have new creatures here. We have basically the first non-critter creatures of the monster world. We have critters, obviously, that are all around the islands, but these are creatures that are separate to that. They are just exclusively to the Monstriana Trenches. Even though I think they can still be critters, I think they are unique in their own right, so I wouldn't even really class them as being critters. Inside of the trailer, we saw quite a few of these when Blabbit made the way down from the trophy, where the Monstriana Trenches were discovered for the first time in ages, and we saw the Jlellijiggles, which is a jellyfish almost, and we got some higher quality images here too today, quite luckily for me to show you guys, so we can see some glowing parts inside of this. Lots of weirdness and alien ET vibes coming from this. Very cool, isn't it? Alongside the text too, you can see a profile for this monster, data source it says, and then some loading text and buffering, and I'm assuming this is based on just analyzing these monsters itself, seeing as though they were trying to get across that ET style inside of the trailer. And then as next one that we see is Glimmerglaws, my personal favorite, okay? It's a cute crab, this one. Basically what we were expecting for the Water Island Mythical, to be honest. But surrounded by prism-like looking shards that you've seen from the prism gate inside of Dawn of Fire. Got some mighty claws, this one too, and some really cute eyes. Going from Glimmerglaw, we get the biggest one of all then though. We get the Anemon. This one is a colossal, truly colossal. I would not be surprised if this is the same size as the colossal, to be honest, when they're in the islands themselves. This thing is huge. Anemon, what a cool name as well. This one, sort of like Jlellijiggles, has tentacles coming off it, just like a jellyfish, but instead this time it's inside of this see-through skin-like material on top of this monster, or membrane, whatever you want to say. And this one, the main reason I think I'm feeling like it looks like a colossal is just because of the eye. I don't know why, but every time a monster is massive in the monster world or whatever, it just seems like they have massive eyes. I don't know whether that's an indicator of things to come, but there you go. And it also has some glowing material coming from its eye, Anemon too. All three of these creatures make up all of the creatures that we know from the Monstriana Trenches. However, it's important to note that apparently there's hundreds of creatures down here. As if we head over to Anglow's bio, it says that the Monstriana Trenches acts as a sanctuary for hundreds of strange creatures, and it names Anemonons, Glimmerglaws, and Jlellijiggles as only being examples of these. So considering this, there's tons more creatures out there, which is really exciting, as just having this bit of confirmation, I think, really elaborates on how deep this area might go inside of the lore and how big it might be. Barely even tapping the surface of this Monstriana Trenches. When the Anglow moved in Jlellijiggles, then more Anglows started coming down, as this was quite a safe haven for these monsters, and I'm assuming they've really liked it down there. So more monsters started coming on over, more Anglow. However, these creatures that were inside of the Monstriana Trenches, they started to get a bit worried behind more Anglows coming. I mean, all this time it had just been them inside at Monstriana Trenches, so all of a sudden having all of these Anglows coming down from space and the being aliens. You can imagine them being quite terrified, to be honest. However, these Anglows decided to captivate on these creatures a little bit more and to gain the trust, and they did this by putting on something, as it refers to inside of its bio, an unforgettable light show. This idea was formed from them wanting to gain the trust of all of the other creatures and just trying to put each monster's mind at ease, and this was a successful play for them. However, going back to the initial point behind Elderglow making its way out from the planet that they were from in the first place, there was a reason behind why it was traveling, and that was to find out more about the monsters and befriend them. And so far, they've not managed to do that. They've only managed to befriend creatures that they weren't necessarily looking towards. So the Anglows continued to try and learn about the surface. However, they avoided contacts for quite a while as they were quite unsure behind the statistics of going up there and everything. However, you don't put things past kids, do you? Because the younger Anglows took note towards this intention that all the older ones had and decided that they were going to go up to the surface. So the younger Anglows made their way on up and they met the monsterlings on the continent. And they also, quite particularly, you know my love for colossals, they met the colossals. When I first learned about this, I was going crazy. This is the first time we've seen or heard or just known about colossal spirits existing inside of the Dawn of Fire, and that to me is just the most exciting thing in the world, okay? These all-knowing spirits, they knew exactly who the Anglows were, of course, as the colossals, they are all-knowing, but the monsterlings of the continent didn't have a clue, of course. This brings it up to question for me whether the colossals as creations outstretch into these other planets that might exist, or whether it's just limited towards what we know with the pocket dimension and the main dimension of the monster world, the prime reality. That just made me really think back to that, because Anglows from a completely different place, but I wouldn't put it past the colossals, to be honest. I also think back to the spaceship behind these Anglo creatures, because inside of the Dawn of Fire period, it's always been stated the tech was quite advanced back then compared to what it is now. So with these spaceships, was that also the case for these other planets and other places? Was that the same? Or are they still quite as advanced? That's something that I would like to know more about. And the way that the Anglo knew that monsters existed out there and that potentially it was just by accident that they fell on the monster world in the first place, does that mean that the Anglos knew that other monsters are out there on the other planets? Certainly, I do think that is quite likely. Anyway, from here, the Anglos unfortunately had to hide themselves away, as shortly after this period, the cataclysm occurred at the continent. So they hid themselves deep inside the crack of the living ocean, also known as the Monstriana Trenches, and here they laid until Bobby found them all the way recently. So the Anglos have been hiding more than likely all the way down there for thousands and thousands of years, just waiting for the chance to come out. These poor souls, just like the fire elementals, they were scared to death of the cataclysm and not knowing whether other things still existed. They just didn't know anything. It's quite the tragedy, ain't it, when you think about it? But it has a great ending, doesn't it? I really love this lot. This is my favourite part behind the War Island Mythicals, so I wanted to share a bit of light on it today. If you want to check out some more lore just like this though, be sure to go and check out this playlist for all my Singing Monsters lore that you would ever need to know, honestly. I'll see you guys later though for now. Bye guys.